It's unclear how many Australian homeowners went to the last federal election thinking that Labor's economic management would lead them toward a barrage of interest rate nightmares and rate hikes and inflationary pressure caused by government error. Nick Hossack joins us now to discuss the situation. Nick, welcome to Spectator TV.
Thank you very much, Alexandra. Thank you for having me.
Look, you've written a piece this week called "It's Amazing How Tolerant Home Borrowers Have Become." And you start off by describing the Aston by-election as a litmus test for the Labor Party to see if their high proportion of mortgage holders were assigning blame to Labor. They didn't. Nick, why aren't Australians putting two and two together on this one?
It's very unusual, isn't it, that in the economics community, people are just saying, why is it the case that we have a 3.5% unemployment rate, yet the budget next year will still be in deficit? It really should be in surplus by a very, very large amount. And within the economics community, that is well understood. But the wider population hasn't seemed to have gotten that link. And that's been to the government's benefit because they're not being blamed for the high interest rates. The reality is that if the budget was in a much stronger position, if it was in surplus, 50 billion where it really probably should be, then that would take a lot of pressure off interest rates and off home borrowers.
Well, a lot of home borrowers don't know a huge amount about economics or about politics. Now, is this a failure of the media for not explaining what's going on as far as interest rate rises go and government mismanagement of policy? Because people do rely on the media to tell them what's going on.
I think it is to an extent. Mind you, the linkages are difficult. They're not easy to understand. At the core here is the question, what causes inflation? And there's answers for that, but the reasoning is not particularly simple. What the economists will say is that where you have a situation where aggregate demand, and I'll come back to that, is greater than aggregate supply, you're going to get a inflationary response. What is aggregate demand? Well, aggregate demand is just basically everything that you and I and everyone else wants to buy. And aggregate supply is everything that the business community can supply to us. And when what we want to buy is much greater than what can be supplied, then we have an inflationary effect. And that's what we're seeing now. People have got a lot of money. They had money stored up from the pandemic spending and they want to spend it, and the suppliers just can't supply it. And one of the reasons is they can't get enough staff to supply the goods. So it's a complicated story, and that's just one aspect of inflation. Another aspect of inflation, of course, is, well, if costs go up, that means businesses have to put up their prices. So what are the factors that push up costs of business? Well, one of them is labour and wages. Now, most of us who consume also earn wages, and we all want higher wages, so you don't tend to get much complaint about that. But that's another factor which is impacting on inflation and on home borrowers.
It also matters who's got the stored up money, because at the moment, the people who were paid during the pandemic were the young workers who earned more money than they normally would. And the people who lost money are the business owners and the homeowners who took out additional loans to limp their way through the pandemic. So businesses with rising interest rates and rising costs of energy are the ones who can't cope, whereas the young kids are sitting at home not needing to go and find a job because they've still got cash stored up. So that's not helping the situation.